Welcome, council, and the attending audience that's out there. I'm going to call the meeting to order. Is there any conflict amongst council members here tonight? Or this afternoon, pardon me. Seeing none, I'm going to go to the adoption of the published agenda. Before we do that, I'm going to go right to Rob first.
Just one quick addition to the agenda. We received a delegation request from a Brad Allard and Cal, residents of Dunn. Looking for council to accept them as a delegation for the meeting tonight.
Well, from council to allow them in, please. Okay, that's carried. Okay, I need the mover for the adoption of published agenda, please. Councillor Guerin and Councillor Bowman, all in favor? Thank you. That one's carried. And we'll go right to presentations from administration, and we'll go right to, I guess, Lori Chadwick will be the first to speak. Go ahead, Lori.
Thank you. Good evening, council, and thank you, your worship. I just wanted to put a heads up there, if we could, to Shelley. Shelley, Rita is trying to get into the meeting. So let's stay tuned for Rita. If I need to take the floor, Mr. Mayor, I will do so. But we'll see how things go with Rita for the next couple of minutes. Before we do get started, again, once more, hello to you, council, and to our members of the public that are both in this meeting as well as potentially watching this meeting. Before we get into the presentation, I wanted to introduce the purpose of tonight's meeting and provide you with some takeaways for consideration. It's no secret that Colchester, which we just chatted about before the meeting started, and its beach, its harbor, the local wineries, and our beautiful cycling system provides an opportunity for tourism that draws in both local residents as well as tourists alike. This proposal could very much be seen as one that provides a positive impact on the local economy and could enhance visitor accommodation. So you have in front of you an opportunity to draw upon the long-standing success of the applicant's Grove business brand to offer a unique boutique motel amenity right here in Colchester. From a development perspective, the subject site is currently zoned, which some of you already know, as R3.1, which is high density residential. What that means is that it currently permits, as of right, some uses such as a 5 to 6 story apartment building, a residential care facility, a group home, or even a lodging house. These are all uses that are currently permitted by right without a zoning amendment. From an official plan perspective, however, and specifically under the Colchester Secondary Plan, this particular site, the subject site, has a vision and has been designated in the category called Main Street Area, and specifically is a western anchor into the Colchester Secondary Plan area. The Main Street Area designation clearly permits roofed accommodations such as hotels, motels, and inns. So council, we're here tonight to inform and to consult with the public on a site-specific rezoning application to add an additional use to what is already permitted on the property. So you're not going to see a rezoning to a completely different commercial district. You're going to see an additional use, which our Manager of Planning Services, Rita Jabbour, will be summarizing for us tonight. A rezoning application must be considered under the guiding principles and the policies of the provincial policy statement, the county's official plan, and our own official plan and secondary plan. Let's also not lose sight of the recent council-adopted agritourism development strategy, which identifies specific objectives aimed at supporting more opportunities for short-term accommodations in the area. As you will see, the proposal is also subject to site plan control to review the design, the layout, and servicing for the development to ensure that our local, our county, and other agency standards and requirements are met. So to clarify for everyone tonight, we have a duty to consult under the Planning Act on the rezoning. This is mandatory. But we also have an opportunity under the secondary plan to encourage public input into the site plan approval process. As with any other public meeting, a decision should not be made tonight. We are together tonight to hear input from the public, as well as you, our council representing the community. As indicated, Rita will be walking us through the presentation. However, afterwards, administration is on hand to assist with questions that stem from the presentation or from delegates. But we also have with us tonight the applicants, Jim Flynn and Kim Lewis, joined by their design build team, McCloskey Engineering, ADA Architects, as well as Lester Group. So thank you, Mr. Mayor. The floor is yours, or mine. I'm going to put myself on mute while I see what's going on with Rita.
Lori.
Okay, Mr. Mayor, I am going to have to step in. So I would be happy to make the presentation for tonight. A question to Shelley. Shelley, could you run through the presentation and I'll just have you flip through those pages as we proceed?
Do that for you, Lori.
Thank you. Shelley, if you could, yes, I was going to say, so center the screen if we could, so we can see the entire page. Let's go to the next slide, please. So I just introduced the project tonight, and the purpose of tonight is to hear representations from the public on a site-specific zoning amendment. As I indicated, that is mandated under the Planning Act, but what you see in that second paragraph, we're going to also encourage public input into the planning process for site plan and design. That is encouraged under the secondary plan specific to Colchester. Friendly reminder, council does not make decisions at this time. Next slide, please. So the hamlet of Colchester Center is a secondary settlement area in our official plan. This means that it functions as a servicing center for the surrounding Lakeshore Residential District to the west and to the east, as well as to the agricultural areas. The Colchester Secondary Plan establishes a cohesive vision and planning framework for the area to ensure balanced and sustainable growth. In fact, the Colchester Secondary Plan is unique to the town of Essex in that it is the only secondary plan specific to a settlement area. Is the only secondary plan we have under the official plan. Next slide, please. So this just gives us a visual of the hamlet of Colchester Center in reference to what I just referred to as Lakeshore Area West and Lakeshore Area East. So right in the center, right at that harbor front is Colchester Hamlet, or our former village of Colchester. And that is where the secondary plan study area encompasses. Next slide, please. So here is a location map of the subject site. It is at the corner, the northeast corner of Dunn Road and County Road 50. It's approximately 3,700 square meters. And it's also located in Ward 3, Colchester South. The designation, as I chatted about earlier, is Main Street area. That's under the official plan. And the existing zoning, which I did speak to earlier, is high density residential R3.1. Next slide, please. Shelley, if you could do the arrow down next to the 131 and just go to 100%. To the right. To the right, yep, okay. Okay, so our property profile, the property is currently vacant, and as we know, it's municipal owned, and as we also know, it's currently used for overflow parking. The site currently has access to municipal water, municipal sanitary, and municipal storm sewers along County Road 50 and Dunn Road. It's indicated in our Colchester Secondary Plan as a gateway, so that western gateway into Colchester Center. As we all know, the site is also adjacent to the CWATS system, the countywide active transportation system. Next slide, please. This is our neighborhood profile, so the zoning around the district. I don't expect us to zoom in on it, but I just wanted to showcase that the subject site in the existing zoning is our 3.1, which is that high density residential, but we do see pockets of commercial and as well as green district. Next slide, please. And this is that secondary plan or the official plan that we talked about. So the designation for these lands in red all along County Road 50 is Main Street area. The designation for the lands surrounding, you can see, are a mix of waterfront area as well as hamlet residential. Those blue stars that you see are those proposed gateways, which I indicated that this particular site is designated as a gateway, as well as Main Street area. Next slide, please. So what does Main Street area mean in the secondary plan? What it means is that it's designated as the central commercial core that will provide opportunities for commercial and entertainment uses, which cater to the residents and tourists alike, as well as ancillary residential uses. Next slide, please. So the zoning change, as indicated earlier, would be site-specific and would not be a full major rezoning to a commercial, but rather adding a use. So in this case, the proposal is to permit a 2-story motel development with 28 guest rooms. The zoning will also remain as indicated as R3.1, with the motel as an additional permitted land use. A motel is defined as a building used primarily for the sleeping accommodation of the traveling public. The motel will also include on-site parking for patrons, a cafe, and indoor bicycle storage facilities. The operators, as we all know, are the proprietors of the Grove Hotel in Kingsville. Next slide, please. So this is the motel, the site plan, which is not coming out very clear. So later on, if we need to refer to it, I will be happy to pull up and share my screen and we can zoom in as needed. But this has been distributed to our agencies, to our internal departments, as well as to our external partners as well for review, as well as some of the other drawings. So this is the overall bird's eye view. You see almost a U shape of the site with the north arrow going to the top of the screen, Dunn Road running north-south, and County Road 50 running east-west. The parking is in the center, driveway along County Road 50 as well. Let's go to the next slide, please. So the zoning regulation. So that site-specific zoning amendment, Rita and her team have looked at specifically, again, for this application, what is being proposed and what will be written into the proposed zoning itself. So it sets out the minimum rear yard, front yard, side yard depths, as well as a maximum building height of 10 meters or 32 feet. Next slide, please. This gives folks, yourselves, as well as members of the public, a taste of the building elevations. So this, I think, we don't have, these are the proposed building elevations from the front, but I'm going to get into in the next slides a little bit more of a zoom. So let's go to the next slide, please. Is that the next slide? Sorry, can we go back one? We could. Okay, sorry about that. Thank you, Shelley. Let's go back one. Let's go forward. Yep. So this is the south facing, meaning this is what, if you are standing at Dunn and at the site, you'd be looking right at it. This is the proposed south-facing elevation for the Grove Motor Lodge or Motor Inn. Next slide, please. Again, these are just renderings for now to give everyone perspective of what is envisioned. This is that west-facing, like looking towards Dunn Road to the left, and some of the parking area as well that's being proposed. Next slide, please. This is the east facing, so the kind of the east property line, the other side of the U that I believe is being proposed for a part of that area is being proposed for the bicycle storage facility. Next slide, please. So some of the things that we do, administration, is we take, oh gosh, we look at, I like to say we're the center of a lot of the review. So we have to take from members of the public, our engineering team, the county team, IRCA. We also look at the provincial policy. And what does the provincial policy statement say? Settlement areas. So again, this is a secondary settlement area. It's encouraged that settlement areas be the focus of growth and development. Land use patterns within settlement areas shall be based on densities and a mix of land uses. That's highlighted for you to take consideration of. What we see is that this proposal efficiently uses land and resources. We also see, is it appropriate and does it efficiently use the infrastructure and public service facilities which are planned or available? We see that services are available at this location. And then finally, a mix of land uses that supports active transportation, which you see the Grove bike rental, for example, has certainly been a part of the vision for the Grove brand in Colchester, as well as the active transportation system just in front and attaching to this site. Let's look at the next slide, please. So into that policy framework, we go from province and then we move down to our county. So the county OP also speaks to secondary settlement areas. What should we be looking for? All types of land uses are permitted within secondary settlement areas, provided that cost-effective development patterns which reduce servicing costs are encouraged. Environmental, heritage, preservation, or public health and safety concerns are avoided, and no negative impact on the traffic movement or overall function of a county road. Lots of consultation with the county has been had, and that we'll get to in just a moment. We do also want to highlight that it's the policy of the county to ensure long-term economic prosperity for settlement areas by encouraging local OPs to maintain the well-being of downtowns and main streets. Next slide, please. We're going to continue now into our policy framework, but this time I want to take it down to the municipal level. So municipally, we've got province, county, and us. We've got the Colchester Secondary Plan. Roofed accommodations, as I indicated in my opening statements under section 4.1, including motels, hotels, and inns, in accordance with our policies for tourism and recreation, are permitted uses. The town supports the provision for overnight accommodations to promote the town's economic development objectives. So therefore, in this regard, large-scaled roofed accommodations, including hotels and motels, should be directed and will be directed to the Main Street area where services, facilities, and infrastructure exist to accommodate the use. Next slide, please. So this is a slide that summarizes our obligation under the Planning Act to consult and inform the public about a rezoning that's being proposed in their neighborhood. So the Planning Act mandates that any property within 120 meters of the subject site must receive notice. As of last Thursday, which has changed since today, we've received 2 public comments in writing. Oh, sorry, and before we do move on, that 120-meter radius circulation was mandated and is mandated under the Planning Act to be circulated within 20 calendar days of the date of the decision, of the public meeting, which is today. Next slide, please. So we just kind of tabled some of the concerns, and some of the concerns that we've heard even since the writing of this presentation also kind of fall into those categories. So the next slides are going to get into these, but these are just kind of a table of those main concerns, a summary rather, traffic, parking, green space, residential opportunity, infrastructure, loss of lake views, noise, and finally architectural style. So we're going to get into those following this slide. Next slide, please. So the site plan matters. So we talked about this just a few moments ago. The Colchester Secondary Plan is very unique to the municipality. And what it does, it ensures that through site plan approval, a high aesthetic standard of building exteriors and site design, as well as public safety, as well as policy on servicing, landscaping, parking are adhered to. So policies in our Colchester Secondary Plan, specific community design guidelines will provide framework to assist in the review of these applications within the Main Street area. As I indicated earlier, public input is encouraged for significant new developments, although it's not mandated under the Planning Act, such as the rezoning type of public meeting that we're having tonight. We are encouraging public input into the site plan itself as well. Next slide, please. So these are some of the studies that were required and have been submitted or are currently being reviewed as a part of the site plan review process. A photometric plan, which demonstrates the height, the location, and the type of lighting fixtures, that's currently being reviewed by our Department of Infrastructure Services. Our landscaping plan, it identifies planting materials, species, and site location. It also indicates trees that are to be removed. That has been fully reviewed and approved by the town. Our the applicant's stormwater management plan, the purpose of that is to identify measures to control runoff associated with the development. You're going to see that it's no longer going to be a green space or a parking space, rather, it's going to be paved. So that plan is currently being reviewed by the town's engineering consultant as a secondary peer review. The functional servicing report, that determines the impacts of this proposed development, 2-story, 28-unit hotel motel, on municipal services, water and sanitary to be specific. That is currently being reviewed by the town's engineering consultant. Again, that secondary set of eyes, that second peer review above and beyond our own internal review. And then finally, a traffic memorandum. Through the County of Essex, we've done a great amount of consultation here. It identifies the road network improvements, if any, and designs required, if any, to provide a balanced transportation system and accommodate the type of traffic needs of the development. That memo is currently being reviewed by the county and the town. Recommendations, it has already been reviewed rather, and the recommendations are currently being reviewed by the town and the county. Next slide, please. So the public concern related to traffic increases and generally questions around traffic. The traffic memo, again, has been reviewed by the county and the town. The motel development, the results of that memorandum have found that motel development will marginally increase vehicular trips to Colchester without impact on safe operation of the roadway or CWATs. The county and the town agree to the findings of the statement. These are professionals that have prepared, and the professionals that have agreed and signed off on and agreed to the findings of the statement. The highway guardrail, however, the county does recommend that it must stay. Permits from the county are still required for any works in the right-of-way, such as driveway entrances, as well as any signage or structures. So the applicant is well aware of that requirement. Next slide, please. The public concern on the topic of loss of public parking. So this is a parking lot table that identifies where there are parking lots throughout the Colchester Center, any restrictions, if any, such as boat trailers, for example, and specific parking parameters. If there are any further questions related to our loss of public parking, our Director of Community Services / Deputy Chief Administrative Officer, Doug Sweet, is here to also assist in answering any additional questions on that. But we do have several municipal parking lots that are within the area and certainly that are signed as such to be able to direct the public to those spin-off or additional parking lots. Next slide, please. The public concern on loss of green space. So this particular lot, as indicated earlier, has been used as parking space, not by definition has it been used as a parkette or green space. In fact, the applicant has submitted a landscaping plan that has been reviewed and approved by our community services department, and for the type of species, for example, and this particular climate. And the applicant has submitted that plan in the hopes that the property can be considered both aesthetic as well as provide for that greenery and that beautification that trees and flowers and these types of vegetation provide. And lastly, on this particular point, in the green space, again, the use, or rather the zoning for the site is R3.1, which is a high density residential. So it was not identified even in the official plan for parks and open space. It's been identified in the official plan for Main Street use. Next slide, please. There was a concern that there may be a loss of residential opportunity. The settlement area that's been identified in the town's OP, so settlement areas in general, including Colchester, the settlement areas are essentially in the OP, it accommodates, we have enough land or sufficient land to accommodate our projected population for the life of the plan, which is up to 2029. As we know, we are currently embarking on our 5-year OP review, which should be initiated this year, which will take that OP even further. The subject site is not included in this calculation because it was not designated residential in the Colchester secondary plan or the official plan, which means any residential land will not be taken out of production by this particular use because the land was not designated as residential in the OP to begin with. The zoning amendment is supplementary. Residential allowances will not be removed. So as we talked about earlier, it's still going to be R3.1, but adding that motel use as an additional use. And then lastly, specific to Colchester, this group has seen infill residential opportunities and larger scale greenfield development opportunities that remain abundant, not only in the center, but also in especially Lakeshore West, where the sanitary line takes us to the west of Colchester Center. Okay, next slide, please. The concern that we heard on municipal infrastructure, the conclusions and the recommendations of that functional servicing study that was required and the stormwater management plan are currently being reviewed by the town's peer reviewer. So again, it's a second set of eyes. We're reviewing it internally. Our Director of Infrastructure Services is here as well tonight to help assist in answering any additional questions. But those studies that have been submitted, we're having a second set of eyes on them. That's how important we consider this as well. The site plan control approval process will not be granted until the town deems both of these studies satisfactory. Next slide, please. The public's concern on lake views and noise generation. The town should maintain municipal-owned land and public right-of-way where they abut the lakeshore to protect important views where appropriate. The subject site, as we all know, does not abut the lakefront, and the view is therefore not mandated to be protected. However, the property is recognized as a gateway. The building has been set back 6 meters to create that enhanced public space. As well, the applicants themselves are looking, and may speak to just a little bit later, providing a mural at the gateway, an art mural to mark the entry into Colchester and the Main Street area. In fact, what I've heard as well is that we would also like to involve the ACT committee to be involved in that. Maybe it's a design, contest. I'm not sure, but we would love to work with ACT. We'd love to work with council. And again, the applicant is willing and very happy to work with that gateway feature and provide us perhaps an opportunity to have that mural at the gateway to mark Colchester and the Main Street area. Next slide, please. The public concern regarding the architectural style. Next slide, please. So this is where I'd like to speak to everyone about the Main Street Design Guidelines. So we have something called Urban Design Guidelines within that secondary plan under a few categories: building orientation, building height, and then we get into those design guidelines. So new development from an orientation perspective, it should generally be oriented to public streets to clearly identify the public realm, creating a continuous streetscaping and creating attractive barrier-free pedestrian-oriented environments. The principal entrances should also face the street. This is the site plan that you see with the U shape, where that U is open to the main street, to County Road 50, to the harbor front, to that the road that takes us down right to the beach. The building height, the secondary plan does state that the height should not exceed a maximum of 2 to 3 stories. In this case, the application is proposing a height of 2 stories. Next slide, please. So these are the guidelines, those urban design guidelines. I'm not going to read them all here. I do want to highlight you to E, F, and G. D through E or D through G. I wish Rita, I'm gonna see if Rita can help me with that a little bit later. But there are building forms here in urban design guidelines that the application does in fact and does indeed meet the intent. Ground floor commercial, buildings have a low profile. Buildings that are situated with the view being forward. The main entrances should be readily identifiable. There are, however, complement the adjacent developments in terms of scale, massing, heights, and cohesiveness. Then we do get into pieces of this particular urban design guideline that are subject to interpretation. The architectural style in the secondary plan should reflect Old English Tudor themes in keeping with the historical character of the hamlet. This is something that the secondary plan identified, and we're not seeing, as you have all seen for yourselves, applications in Colchester to be able to apply this to in recent years. Besides, I would suggest Garfield's and the Rec, for example, are two of the most recent examples where we've needed to look at the architectural style and does it conform to these policies. Again, these are policies and guidelines. We wanted to give you the facts here and to be able to identify that some of these policies have been met. Next slide, please. I believe we're going to get into, yes. So these are the examples of Old English Tudor style and the guidelines that are in our Colchester secondary plan currently. Next slide, please. This is our existing main street. So not off of the main street, we have a gas station and is that Garfield? That's not Garfield. Oh, there's a bar. That's right. Gas station and bar. Next slide, please. Again, this is the existing main street. So now we have Garfield as well as the Rec. So I want you to look at the peaked roof. So the peaked roof is generally where the Tudor style was generally met in the intent of the Old English Tudor style for the Colchester secondary plan area has been met with these particular developments. Next slide, please. Our agency's circulation was also an integral part of our review. IRCA's comments, they have no objections. Consideration must be made for source water protection. So we're going to look into that just further. We spoke to IRCA on Friday about that very same topic. Recommends the submission of a stormwater management plan, which has been submitted and is currently being reviewed. Next slide, please. So internally, as well as a part of our review, we've circulated internally. Fire and rescue, no objections. Infrastructure, no objections with the traffic memo. Currently reviewing those recommendations with the county as indicated, as well as that servicing plan. Enbridge, no objections. And our accessibility committee has no objections, subject to no reduction in barrier-free parking spaces, and that the access door to the lobby is accessible. These are requirements. So the parking spaces are requirements under the zoning bylaw that must be met before any building permit is provided or any site plan agreement is entered into, as well as access door to the lobby. Those are building code requirements that must be met for accessibility. Next slide, please. Okay, so our next steps. Wonderful. So next steps, June 21st. This is where we're going to be presenting council with a zoning bylaw amendment for council's decision. At the June 21st meeting, council has a few options. The first option is you're able to approve the application, and that approval is effective as of the date of the decision, where there will be a 20-day appeal period that takes effect. The other option that council has is to deny the application, where again, that decision is effective the date of the decision, and there's also a 20-day appeal period. And then lastly, council could also defer the decision to a later date if further information is warranted and required. As a conclusion to our presentation tonight, if a zoning bylaw amendment is approved on the 21st, the appeal period successfully lapses, administration then presents council with a recommendation for site plan control approval following a satisfactory review of those studies, and then we enter into that site plan agreement. Next slide, please. Okay, that's it. Thank you.
Thank you, Lori, for the presentation. And at this time, before we go to the delegations, I'm going to open it up to council. See if any of the councilors have a question for Lori at all. Any questions? Councilor Guerin, go ahead.
Thank you through you, Mr. Mayor. To Lori, or maybe even to Doug, parking is going to be a major issue down there. It seems to be on certain dates. How many spaces do we have down there currently, and how many are we going to be losing if we were to accept this proposal?
You can answer that.
I can go, Mr. Mayor. Through you, Mr. Mayor.
Go ahead, Doug.
Counting that lot, which we call right now Lot E, there are 9 municipal parking spaces or 9 municipal parking lots for a total of 343 parking spaces. Removing that lot, you eliminate 46 spaces, which brings you down to 297 public spaces. Lot double L, which is a lower level, which is permit parking, which is 22. So you bring that down to 275 open to the public. And those are, sorry, just to conclude on that, that is based on the list that Director Chadwick showed earlier in her slide. There is further parking away on street parking if people wanted to walk, but those are the designated municipal spaces.
Okay, so about 15%. Thanks.
Okay, thank you, Councilor Guerin. Any other questions from council? Councilor Vandendolen, go ahead, you're next.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Through you, as I've said before, I like almost everything about this development. But I have one question. The only downside I see is that we're going to lose a couple of good trees. Now we could replant trees, and developments like this don't grow on trees. So I mean, I know which is more important, but I wonder, can we save any of those trees? If we saved even one of the nice ones, that would be helpful, I think.
Councilor, I'm sure the developers also looked at that too. Any other questions? Lori, did you want to reply to that?
Thanks, Mr. Mayor. Just to speak on the removal of trees. So that is a part of our review when it comes to the landscaping plan. So specifically that certain trees could be retained depending on the life and the condition of that tree, as well as planting to be able to kind of offset some of that carbon footprint.
Thank you. As long as the effort is made to save one, that would be great. Thank you.
Thank you, Lori, for the answer on that. Deputy Mayor Malash, you were next. Deputy Mayor Malash, you're muted. You were next. You're still muted.
Sorry about that.
There you go.
To you, Mr. Mayor. Lori, or I'm not sure who can answer this, maybe Mr. Sweet would know better on this one. How many events do we have throughout a regular season where we'll feel the pinch by not having parking spaces in that location?
For you, Mr. Mayor, based on the past 3 years, we've had the annual fishing derby, which is a large event, and we've had the Colchester Family Fun Day. And then we had some smaller events such as the concerts on Monday night. Other than that, it's just been basically park and beach usage.
Thank you. And second question.
Go ahead. Go ahead.
Thank you. So we had a parking lot on County Road 50 right next to this piece of property, another vacant piece of property that's there. Are we going to be able to continue to use that vacant parking lot as a vacant space as a parking lot?
For you, Mr. Mayor, the current owner of that property has given us permission again to continue to use that as parking.
Okay, thank you. And that's counted, that part's counted. Those spots are already counted in though.
Correct. There are those numbers I provided.
Okay, great. Thank you.
Okay, just further to that, to Deputy Mayor Malash, I know when we have the derby down there, I know a lot of parking is allowed over at our water plant there in the property there. And I know they usher the people back and forth from that location. So I know the derby, there's a lot of people there in that event. And like I say, they have golf carts. I think Volun's equipment even volunteers and brings people back and forth. So I don't think parking will be an issue here. Thank you. Any further questions? So once again, thank you, Lori, for the presentation. It was a good presentation. And at this point here, I guess I'll need a motion to accept that presentation, please. Have a motion to accept it, Councillor Bowman and Councillor. All in favor? It's carried. And now we'll go right to the delegations. And the first delegation we have is Janice and Chris Smith. So the mic's open, folks. Whenever you're ready, go ahead.
You hear us? Can you hear?
Go ahead.
Okay, good evening, everybody. I like to say Mrs. Chadwick, she did a good job with her presentation, went through all the legal stuff pretty good, did all the crossed the T's, dotted all the I's, except for maybe talking about the people that live in this area that are going to be affected by this. Same with council, they're worried about a tree or some parking. But again, nobody's worried about the residents that are going to really be affected by this. Also, I do believe traffic, big concern. Flow that goes down 50 is going to have to stop all of a sudden. You're coming around a corner, a zig and a zag kind of thing. I think that's going to really be a problem. Noise, again, nighttime noise. You're talking 28 units. I don't know how many people per unit. Anybody know? 4 people per unit. Hello? Nobody? Okay, I'll
We're
just go
listening.
through the questions. We'll go through the questions here.
Can you still hear us?
Yes, we can. Yes.
Okay.
Okay.
Our realty or our property value,
Property value of the people that live in the area.
how we're affected by that. Are this place are they going to be selling alcohol after?
These are questions that we need answers to.
Safety, crossing the street, running back and forth.
This is a
From the
crazy
park.
corner. We live right on the corner and we've seen so many awful things happen on this corner.
And these other lots, I don't know who owns, what is it, 86, 375, 365, 82, 80?
Will they be part of parking also? The extra overflow of parking?
Or is that land affected now that they can't build a home here? And again, you know, I live across the street. You're all talking about beautiful colors and everything. Right now, I wake up to a nice tree lot. I don't want to wake up to a lollipop. This stuff should be on lakefront, not in the city of the hamlet of Colchester, I believe. I think the ideas are good. I think moving outside of the residential area, Komodo Club would have been an excellent site. I just don't feel it's a good area for it myself.
Do we have any feedback?
Pardon me? Go ahead.
Do we have any feedback?
Well, one other thing, I just want to say, you're drawing a lot of people to downtown Colchester. You got the splash pad, great, handicap accessible, the little boat there. You got the marina, you got the restaurant down. You got these bike rentals now. Parking is gonna be an issue. We live here now, right on the weekend, over 30 cars Saturday and Sunday.
Just where the motel is going to be was parked in there. Over 30 cars just there because there's no other parking.
You know, there is other parking, but people don't want to drive their kids and their strollers. This way you cross the street, you're right there into the park. Quick, easy. That's our concerns.
Okay, thank you. Thank you very much for your concerns. All this stuff will be considered. Okay, we're listening to residents. We're getting feedback. So we're taking all this into consideration and we're working with the developer, to be honest. So thank you for your concerns.
All right.
Has council got any questions for the delegation? Seeing none. Oh, Councillor Bjorkman, did you have a question?
Yeah, I do. Thank you, Your Worship, through you, and to Janice and Chris. Thank you very much for coming into the meeting and voicing those concerns. You're not the only ones with those concerns. We have heard that from people in the village. And I think a lot of what Director Chadwick told us tonight addresses some of those things. We have this idea, you know, that the hotel is going to create all this extra traffic. Well, with 28 rooms, it's 28 vehicles, maybe twice a day, in and out, on top of the hundreds of vehicles that are coming in. There will be a change. There will be those people pulling in, but the drastic change, I think that we've had our people look at that and understand and realize that that's not going to be a big difference that we'll experience there. And then, I mean, property values, people are always worried when they're near any kind of development that's not typical of the area, that it's going to affect their property values. And that's an abstract that we can't really deal with. That's why we're asking the developer to use a high quality materials to develop a beautiful motel and the development, so that it won't detract from the area. So there's a number of things here, and we will bring all those forward. And I just appreciate you bringing that forward. I think one of your questions that was asked, and we could ask Mr. Lewis, because I believe he's on, was you asked if there would be alcohol served. From what I understand, there's not, but maybe we could get that question resolved for you. So, Mr. Lewis, do you have that answer?
Thank you, Councillor. To Kim, there will be no alcohol served at this location?
Can you hear me? Hello?
Harry, Kim, we can hear you. Go ahead.
Yes, wow, we do not have the intention of serving alcohol at this location.
Thank you, Kim. Any other questions from council? Councillor Bondi, go ahead.
Thank you for coming, Mr. and Mrs. Smith. It is similar to what Councillor Bjorkman is saying. There are going to be concerns from the community, and residents can also email us. If they didn't get on the agenda tonight, they can email us between now and the 21st to see if, you know, they can influence council. When the proposal came to the old schoolhouse, you know, I didn't feel like it was as good of a fit according to all the plans, but now I'm having a harder time not supporting it, because it does, to me, fit more of the plans. So the problem that I see though over the last 8-9 years on council is I don't know if we've connected with the Colchester community enough to see if this is what council wants for the community or what the residents want for the community. And I'm still struggling with that because I see that this has so much to offer for our region. And Colchester is important with the residents, but it's also important with Harrow residents and McGregor residents and Essex residents. And after the schoolhouse, there was a lot of pressure for us to do something. So that's, I think, where I sit now. So I do want to hear from more residents in between now and the 21st. And I'm grateful residents are speaking up. But to me, there's a lot, this development, I'll use the developers, it checks a lot more boxes. Although it is in people's backyards and impacting them, I think the developers are class act developers, and they're going to try to do everything to accommodate the community as much as possible. And it's up to council to work in liaison. You know, I'm hearing comments, you know, about parking. Can we take the money from the sale of this property and earmark it for parking in Colchester? Whatever amount that is, we don't touch it. We don't put it anywhere else. We save that in a basket and we look for land acquisition. And then we're further ahead because we get the assessment from the hotel and we can still have some money for land. So that's one thing I'd like to see. And, you know, I'm still hearing lots of comments. So tonight we don't make a decision, we just listen. So I appreciate everybody that is reaching out to council. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. Deputy Mayor Malash, go ahead.
Thank you, through you, your worship, and to the Smith side. I also want to talk about parking a little bit. And I think for a long time, we've realized that there's parking issues in that area. And we've always been looking for solutions as to how we can get that resolved. And that's where we came up with the idea of using this particular corner to use as parking for some of the overflow. And I've got the same idea that Councillor Bondi has, is that the sale of this property go into a pot where we look for solutions to try and create more parking in that area. We know that it's an issue, and we want that resolved, as you know, just as much as the residents do, because we hear from the residents, and we want, as councillors and administration too, we want to move on to making this work. So the parking may be an issue in the short term or the near term, but know that council knows that this is going to be an issue and that we're going to be looking for solutions to try and get this resolved. From what I can hear, and I know that it's convenient. The parking there is convenient to get to the park. You can see the beach from that particular location. But going back from the first day that council bought that piece of property, it was for controlled commercial development. We never expected to have a parking lot there or have a park there. That was supposed to have been controlled commercial development. And if the town hadn't bought it for that, someone else would have already purchased it way back in 2008 or 2009, whenever the town purchased that, and potentially could have had a different commercial development on that location. So this is something that the region needs. It's not just for tourism, for beachgoers or park goers or whatever. This is for birders that come to the area. This is for the wineries that have been after council members and developers in the area for quite some time, to try and accommodate them so that they can have people stay close by to where our wineries are. In the events that there's a wedding at some of these places, people don't want to have a wedding on the far south end of the county and then have to drive back into the city of Windsor or out to Amherstburg or to Kingsville. They want to be able to stay right where they're having their weddings close by. The operators here are going to have some kind of vehicle that's going to help people out so that they don't have to drive after they've had drinking. They can, take their shuttle. They'll park their car at the motel, take the shuttle to whatever winery they're going to, and then come back. So there's a lot of good things happening here, and I know that it's an inconvenience to some of the residents, such as yourselves. But again, we're not going to be able to please everybody, and we're trying our best to try and fit a location where this can possibly go. This is an area that's going to be developed over the years. It's just a natural area where through this whole Main Street corridor, and I don't know how to tell you that we can possibly not have something develop on that corner. It's going to happen. And I think this is probably one of the best things that could happen as far as having a person that owns the property that has concerns for the neighbors and is going to try and make it as fit into the neighborhood as best as they possibly can. These are excellent developers. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Councillor Verbeek, you're next. Go ahead.
Thank you. Through you, Mr. Mayor, just one quick question to Mrs. Chadwick. Did I hear you state at the beginning of your presentation that without any amendments to our zoning bylaw, someone could purchase that spot and put a 6-story apartment building?
Yes, that's absolutely correct. So permitted by right, a 5 to 6-story residential building with 50, 60, 70 units, residential units, is permitted by right. Of course, it would have to go through site plan control, and of course, the property would need to go through the surplus process, no different than this application. But according to the zoning, R3.1, it's a high density residential, current zoning. Yes.
Any other questions? Thank you. Thank you very much. I will go to our next delegation, and that's Brad and Kelly. Are you on? Are you still on? Kelly and Brad.
Yeah, hello.
Okay, go ahead. You're next. Go ahead.
Okay. Well, first of all, I was wondering, there's things that are under review for the functioning service report, and there's a couple other things that are under review. When are we going to have answers to that review? Are we going to have access to the answers to that or any of the recommendations? Or is that going to be the June 21st meeting?
Can you answer that? Go ahead.
Or was that to me, Mr. Mayor?
Laurie, if you can answer that.
Yes, absolutely. So through you, Mr. Mayor, to the members of the public, the site plan review process normally would not include public input, but because this is a part of the secondary plan in Colchester, public input is encouraged. What that means is council, if they wish, they may want to host another public meeting just for site plan review, or when we bring forward the site plan control agreement to council, they may wish to approve it knowing that public input on the site plan has been incorporated to the satisfaction of the town, meaning these studies have been reviewed to the satisfaction of the town. The site plan, maybe the buffering, maybe the parking layout, maybe the photometric plan, all of that is going to be reviewed by administration. Council will receive the report and the agreement following June 21st. So June 21st to the members of the public is just for the rezoning, to rezone and to allow for the land use being the motel. If council approves the land use, then we bring forward the results of our studies as a part of this site plan control. If council is satisfied that we've done our due diligence with incorporating public input into the site plan agreement, then sometime in July, they can enter into that agreement and approve. Or if they feel we haven't done a good job and we need to involve the public a little bit more, then council can defer and maybe direct us to hold more public meetings if we need to, or one-on-one kitchen table conversations with residents.
I was just concerned about the stormwater, and I'm concerned about the quality and quantity in our water in this area. So that's why I wanted to know if we would be updated on that. I know this is an old subject, but the whole parking. What they forgot to mention, even though there's 275 parking spots there, what they forgot to mention is when there's an event at the community center, some of that parking is reserved just for the community center event that's going on. So that minimizes parking. Another thing is there's boats with trailers, and the parking spot beside the wreck is reserved for the trailers from 6 in the morning till 1 in the afternoon. There's always boats with trailers there later. So that is taking up parking spots, as well as at the top of the hill, right? There's parking for the boats and the trailers. There's only 12 parking spots at the park, and there's 15 parking spots along the road. I don't know how we can improve the parking. And the lower level, well, that wasn't included, so. The other thing I wanted to discuss was the 2 to 3 story. I'm really confused about that, because is that leaving it open for them to expand higher up? No? Okay. Thank you. I think Ms. Chadwick.
If I can answer that,
Thank you.
no, it won't be going higher than 2 stories.
I was just wondering why that was put that way.
The policy.
No, you haven't got a problem there, Kelly.
Okay.
The policy indicates, through you, Mr. Mayor, to our residents, the policy indicates that if an application were to be received for a hotel, that this particular site would be suitable for no higher than 2 to 3. But what we do is then we take the application and we say, okay, what's your proposal? The proposal is 2 stories. We write that into the zoning amendment itself, meaning that no higher than 2 stories would be permitted, and that's written in the zoning.
Thank you. I have one more thing I just want to make my concern about the traffic in this area, because we live right on this corner, and like the Smiths had already said, it is horrendous out here, especially during the busy summer. We hear the tires screeching, we hear the yelling, we hear the horns honking. There's so many near accidents, and I've also talked to a few residents this week about having to stop and let families cross that busy road. When they're parked in that parking lot and crossing County Road 50, and a single mom with 3 or 4 kids and a cooler and everything else, trying to cross that busy road, it's just, you are adding more traffic to the area because of the beach and all the amenities, which is, it's great for the community growth, but it's dangerous. And I don't know why they even approved that corner. That's my own personal opinion. It's horrendous. And we've been living here for over 30 years. Back in Colchester's heyday, and this is how I feel a little bit that the councillors aren't listening sometimes to what we want in this village, because back in the heyday, it was mostly cottages. It was people coming for their summer vacationing. They were leaving. They weren't having to deal with the consequences of the aftermath of what happens around here. And I think a lot of residents feel like, it's been 20 years we've been sitting here with an open green field, and it's a lot without a lot of things that are in place first, like the parking. And we have parking down here on Dunn Road too. They're parking in front of the roped off area. So we were walking around the neighborhood this weekend, and people were driving around and asking where there's parking. I mean, it is going to be an issue. It is something that we have to look at when those spaces are taken away by boats and trailers. I know Brad has a couple questions about the cafe. So go ahead.
I had a couple different questions. First of all, the land that is proposed was once a gas station. Has it been a study done to see if there's residual tanks there or anything?
Yeah, I don't want to get
Ed, Lori.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Sometimes I missed your microphone. Anyways, yes, there has been a due diligence completed to ensure that if any gas station was on the site, and predating my time, predating a lot of my team members' time. So we did need to do a lot of digging and a lot of, a lot of research into our archives And we discovered that there was a abandoned storm sewer
Mm.
underneath the ground, that there may, but we don't have record of, an abandoned underground storage tank for a former gas station. We have been working with the applicants to perform environmental site assessments, but we believe that these structures underneath the ground have been abandoned, but there will be in the near future a soil sampling conducted on the site, as well as photo radar, ground penetrating radar
Right.
to confirm the locations of those as well. So we're on it.
Okay. Okay.
Just worried.
Also, the residential part of with the amendment, is this open up for the possibility of people living there full time?
I should probably just keep my video on.
Yeah,
Thank you, Ms.
Go ahead, Lori, just
Okay.
go ahead.
Thanks, Mr. Mayor. The possibility is not there. This is short-term accommodation. So that's the use that's permitted under the definition of motel, meaning 28 days or less.
Okay. Also, about the mural that's going to be proposed, there's already a mural in Colchester on the Colchester Bar and Grill that we've heard people complain about already, that they don't like it. What is going to be different about this mural that's going to be excessive, like wanting?
I'm not sure at this time. I think it's an opportunity for us, for the applicant and for the town to work together and find a compromise and perhaps involve the artist community through the ACT committee, which Mr. Sweet, to our Director Sweet, I believe is called the Arts, Culture and Tourism Committee. They are a committee of council, and perhaps we can work with ACT. The applicant can work with ACT to have maybe an artist contest, bring forward a proposal to ACT, and then ACT would make a recommendation to council. Our hope is to be able to highlight Colchester and have some sort of piece, especially for that gateway feature, because that is a policy and a guideline in our secondary plan as the Western Gateway into Colchester.
Okay. Also, about the cafe, what will the cafe be serving and who will they be serving? Will it be only residents or will be people trafficking in there?
The cafe, my understanding through you, Mr. Mayor, the cafe I understand is open to the general public, but would serve the needs of the patrons as its main use.
Okay.
Correct me if I'm wrong to Mr. Lewis, if I'm wrong on that.
Okay.
The idea of, sorry.
Hello, yes, the public's more than welcome. You're more than welcome to stop by.
Okay. The idea of 28 rooms, 34 parking spots with
Now a cafe.
a cafe, where are people going to park? If you get a busy night and get a couple of
Or
people with
morning.
trailers, that parking lot will fill up really quick.
And then you're talking about traffic there also. And yes, you're saying it'll be, marginally traffic for the hotel. But if you have a running cafe there and people want to stop, there's more traffic going in and out there too. So I think that has to be looked at or considered at least, especially if it's going to be a good running business. And is the cafe going to be open like all day?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, to speak to the point on parking on site, as a part of a application review, our development review process does include a review of a land use in reference to parking requirements. So number of parking spaces, radius of movements of vehicles, as well as the width of those aisles. All of these things are considered during site plan review. So it's in this particular realm that the application does meet the zoning bylaw for a motel supplementary use such as a cafe, and it does meet that minimum parking requirement. In fact, it exceeds that parking requirement for the land uses.
No.
Okay, just one other thing. We're not opposed to the motel itself. We're opposed to the location.
Yeah.
It's on
We
a
live
busy
right across the
corner.
street and it's busy.
It's a small condensed area right in the middle of, you look at your site plan, you've got a to start right in the middle of all that residential, and it should be left for residential. Put an apartment building in there, that'd probably be fine. I just don't think the idea of that traffic all the time in and out to the cafe, to the motel, that amount of people, just not working.
Okay, thank you. Thank you for your input, folks. Everything you say will be considered at our next meeting, but just to let you know, we know that not everybody's going to be pleased with this development. And just to let you know, we have first-class developers that are putting, and they're going to work with the people. And let's face it, and I'm sure you living there all them years, you understand that we're not going to make everybody happy. You know that. I lived in that area where you are my entire life. I raised my family there. And I'll be honest with you, with this development going in, I've been approached by different residents that live along that strip. When are we going to get this strip rezoned to commercial? Because there's residents there that want to sell their homes and they want to open up businesses along that stretch. So just to give you a heads up, I know we're going to have some growing pains. I know that. Parking is an issue. We are working on addressing that issue, and hopefully within the next year or 2 years, we'll have more land available for parking. I do understand your concerns. I really do. But these are very, very good developers, and they will work with the public, believe me. So thank you very much for your presentation. Any questions to the delegation from council? So once again, thank you. Kim, thank you for sitting in on the meeting. I don't know if council has any questions for you. Does council have any questions for Kim tonight? Seeing none. Thank you very much, folks, for sitting in on the meeting. So at this point here, if there's nothing else, Deputy Mayor Malash, go ahead. Go ahead, Deputy Mayor.
Motion to adjourn.
Thank you. Seconder, please. Councilor Bowman, all in favor? Carried. Thank you. See you at 6.